Hello, my name is Matthew Mosher. I'm an intermediate artist, meditator, and research professor. I'm originally from the northeastern United States, but I currently live in Central Florida. I create intermediate artworks and experiential systems that bridge the physical and digital worlds. These systems manifest as interactive sculptures, immersive installations, and choreographed performance pieces. My work blends new media, physical computing, relational aesthetics, computer programming, and traditional sculpture processes. I use microprocessors and visual programming languages to embed sensing technologies into constructed wooden, welded metal, found object, and 3D printed forms. With a background in furniture design, I am interested in how the human body adapts to physical spaces and how embodied gesture can generate meaning for an audience. Ultimately, I choose my materials and media based on what will best support the concept of the piece and convey the message of the work. Conceptually, my work examines current political issues, interpersonal relationships, and the role of technology in each. I strive to make work that inspires reflection and discussion of topics ranging from consumerism to gun violence and from in-person to social media relationships. My research asks, how might we use data visualization techniques and experiential systems design to engage the public with complex social issues? And how might we utilize art to foster empathy and shared experience between diverse groups that would otherwise not engage with each other? By asking these questions, my work promotes people to explore their own relationships to art and other members of society. My goal is to promote dialogue and empower people to see the world from a different perspective. I view art as a driver for social change through critique of social constructs. I applied for the Artists-in-Action program because I really needed studio space. I had just completed a Fulbright Scholar Fellowship in Austria and had given up my apartment and old studio when I moved overseas. So I knew after coming back, I'd have nowhere to work. I was also looking for opportunities to engage more with the local arts community in the Orlando area. The studios at the Art and History Museums were able to provide both of those things, so I was excited to apply. It has definitely been harder to manage my time than I expected, or to get into a flow with my work. Splitting my time between teaching classes at the university and doing research here has kept me from feeling really engrossed in my artwork. I've still been able to complete a tremendous quantity of projects here. I thought we might have a few more visitors, given the open doors policy at the studio, but it's a little secluded down here at the lake. I'm honestly not complaining about that. The quiet helps me stay focused. In my first year at the studio, my focus was really on completing the cast bronze gun violence data visualizations and the interactive telephone sculpture that you can see in the exhibition. This year, my goal is to conduct a lot of smaller experiments, things I've been wanting to try and explore, but have not had the time or space to do so. I was back in Austria for an exhibition when the pandemic hit Europe. They canceled the show literally the day after the press conference for the opening. I had about 4 other exhibitions and events lined up for the summer, and they all transitioned to online modalities. It was nice that they were able to carry on in the face of the pandemic, but something is definitely lost in trying to take gallery work and performances and showcasing them online instead. It's odd, the whole situation has left me feeling a bit empty creatively. It feels odd to me because I've always made political and activist art. So usually political conflict gives me a lot of fuel, but now everything just feels a bit overwhelming. To close, I wanted to tell you a bit more about 3 of the pieces in the exhibition from the Ownership series. Each of these bronzes corresponds to a specific statistic on American gun ownership in 2020. The data was compiled by Everytown Research. Ownership Pernicious Doubt relates to a 3-fold increase in suicidal death for people with access to firearms. Ownership Occlusions correlates to the statistic that carrying a gun makes you 4 times more likely to be killed in an aggressive encounter than without one. Ownership night terrors corresponds to the 5-fold increase in fatal domestic abuse events in households with guns. Thank you for attending the exhibition, and I hope you enjoy the work.
Hi, I'm Jacoub Reyes, and I'm an artist in action here at Maitland Art Center. I originally applied to become an AIA because I needed studio space, and I also wanted to get more involved in the community. And Maitland has actually really helped me with that, which has been great for my personal practice and for the things that I believe in. So having a studio here right on Lake Lily has really changed my art practice. It's given me a place where I can kind of call home. I come here and I get to draft up new ideas for murals and large-scale wood blocks, and I'm able to actually lay out my work and work on bigger stuff. So now my work is, growing, it's becoming more experimental, and that's really a big part of my practice. So I'm able to explore and experiment those things within the walls of my studio. So right now I'm continuing a series of large-scale woodcuts that talk about the colonialism in the Caribbean and how it relates to America. So actually on our own soil, we have tons of colonial issues that we are faced with every day. And what I do is I integrate those issues, and I have conversations with people in our community through my work. So that deals with interactive installations, large-scale murals, really anything to get people involved and to interact with art. So we're able to have those interesting conversations around difficult topics. So COVID has actually it's been a double-edged sword. It's actually aided in my creative process, but it's also barred me from a lot of things that I was planning on doing this year. I had a couple installations internationally. I had a couple big projects coming up, and those were kind of put on halt from the virus. But it's also given me time to slow down and kind of focus on what I want to say, kind of hone in on my technical skills and some of my writing skills, actually. Writing is a huge part of any artist practice, any career artist. And that's something that I've been really trying to cultivate and manage with this time. So I really look forward to continuing to experiment within the walls of my studio and engage the community outside of those walls. So I'd like to thank Maitland for having me, and I look forward to connecting with you and sharing my work. So you can find me on Instagram at Jacoub Reyes, or you can go to my website, www.jacoubreyes.com. That's JACOUBREYES. And I hope to have some contact with everyone in a contactless way. So I'll see you later. Happy 2020.
My name is Ericka Sobrack. I'm a current AIA at the Maitland Art and History Museum, and I first applied here because I was transitioning between graduate school and then becoming a more professional artist in the field, and wanted to continue the momentum of working in the studio. This program was recommended to me by one of the current AIAs at the time, and then when I came here I just fell in love with the atmosphere and the mission behind Maitland itself. When I was selected to be an AIA, I was humbled to be working with not only other dedicated artists, but the Maitland team has such a dedicated passion to the arts. And as I learned more about the history and mission of the program, I became even more humbled and proud to be part of the preservation and legacy of Andre Smith, which is to be a part of an artist community. So recently, I've been working with my small-scale suburban landscapes and also some works on paper, but due to COVID, I've had a chance to really meditate and think about my work. And I feel like living in this new normal, specifically with the lockdown and social distancing, it has reinforced some of the motifs within my work, such as aloneness, isolation, stillness. And I think that parallels the threat of COVID, where my landscapes still speak true to the invisible threats within domestic scenes. And I feel like it's an obscure threat that looms within the unknown, where the familiar mundane becomes foreign. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Wanda Raimundi-Ortiz, and I am one of the Artists-in-Action here at the Maitland Art Center. So I really was yearning, aching, in fact, for a quiet studio working space where I could, not work from home, really experiment with things, be around like-minded people, bounce ideas off of them. That's what I needed when I applied, and one look at the campus, and it's easy to see why anybody would want to come here and make this their work home or their home away from home. But I have to say, what I did not expect was how much I really needed creative sanctuary. And I think as an artist, you need to be able to really see progress and growth in your work. I think you really need to feel creatively, like safe creatively, and supported, especially when you are considering branching into a new area with your work. And that's something that I didn't expect. When I got here, I thought I was going to be doing more of the same, which I came with plenty of ideas. I did not expect to be making the work I'm making now. So that was a very nice surprise. So in terms of what I'm making right now, I think it's an extension of my interest in sociopolitics, social critique, my justice work, examining stereotypes, Latinidad, hair politics for sure. What has happened is that I've really expanded this work into, not just the performances that I had anticipated to be preparing for, but something a lot more exciting is what has occurred, I think. And especially thinking now how the pandemic and the social reckoning that we're witnessing has really had a serious impact in my work, where now I don't particularly feel safe to do the kind of performances that I was making right now, for a myriad of reasons. But I also feel like the costuming, the wigs that I would normally wear when creating one of my performances, I feel like they have evolved. The same way I've evolved, they've evolved. And I don't think right now My wigs are kind of taking a life of their own, and I'm thinking a lot about nature. I'm thinking a lot about how you can't contain nature, and you can see that out, when whether you're planting a garden or whether you're trying to stifle the voices of the masses. Nature can't be contained, and we're watching what happens when you keep something bound for much too long. It's gonna grow. Even if it grows warped and strange, it's going to grow. And I think that we're witnessing that right now. And that is what's coming out of my work. But I tell you, I wouldn't have been able to come to this place creatively had I not been in this place creatively.
Hi everybody, my name is Nick Kalemba. I'm a current artist in action here at the Maitland Art Center Museum. And I applied to the program directly out of grad school in 2019, and several former AIAs suggested the program to me and that it might be a good fit because I was looking for a studio out of grad school, and I really wanted to keep my sort of creative momentum going. As opposed to trying to move from a private studio into a home studio, and I took their advice, and I remember coming down to the campus, the Maitland campus, and just absolutely like falling in love with the space, with the campus, and the history of the campus, the nature. And meeting a few of the people who are involved in the program. And like I said, I just kind of fell in love with it, and it immediately felt like the right fit for me. And so, obviously I was honored the studio space for that year in 2019, late 2019. And, I had certain expectations coming to the program. And I will say, I've been more than welcomed here in the program by everybody who is involved with it and works so hard to make something like this possible and available to local artists. So like I said, I've just been incredibly humbled to be here, and just a lot of my work is influenced by and kind of dependent on historical references, and being on these grounds that was it was initially built to be an artist colony, where these spaces were designed for artists. It's just been really kind of fruitful for my work. I have these two distinct bodies of work, these two series of work. Where one is kind of capturing these places and these spaces that are kind of long forgotten, and these high traffic areas that are a lot of times kind of intentionally covered up, right? So I'm drawn to old buildings, kind of things that show the history of the human interaction, and just my studio alone, the amount of things that have happened in it, and the amount of kind of memory that's built into the space is really quite profound for me. So like I said, I have these two distinct bodies of work. The one that will be on view during our AI exhibition this year is that first series that I talked about, these spaces that are kind of, they're kind of disprized in a way. They're spaces that people often overlook, and unintentionally, and even try and intentionally overlook. But those are the places that, like I said, have this deep memory built into them that I'm just drawn to. To me, they're quite a bit more beautiful than some of these, manicured lawns and brand new buildings, and kind of a fresh coat of paint on everything doesn't necessarily, for me, equate to beauty in a way. So, and then this other series of work that I have, it begins with that same subject matter, that these disprized scenes that I like to call them, and then it's kind of a reaction. You know, I have trouble dealing with news headlines and media presence and things like that. So, like I said, it starts with these scenes, these landscapes, and then I'm kind of punctuating them and invading them in a way with, you know, scenes from media, scenes from pop culture, images from, you know, internet memes, jokes, things like that, as well as super old imagery, particularly the cartoon iconography of early Disney, early Fleischer Studios cartoons, just because, well, for many reasons, but one of the big ones being that these are some of the cartoons that I grew up with. My parents showed me early Fleischer Studios cartoons from like the 1920s and 30s. So those are, you know, being a native Floridian, those have a big influence on my work. So those start to invade the work also. And it kind of results in this sort of somewhat collage-esque work. But for me, they basically result in these equations that you'll start with, you know, A, B, C, and D, which have their own sort of connotations and meanings built into them, built into the symbols. But then in the act of kind of amalgamating them all together, they tend to build up this deeper narrative. And a lot of the work is very cryptic, and you know, I'm really not interested in posing any questions with the work, posing any answers, excuse me, only questions. So you can see how the two series of work bounces off each other, and like I said, for me, the more collage-like work often comes out of sort of difficult things in news and media. So I'm currently moving back into that mode of working after these pure landscapes that you guys will be seeing in the show this year. So thank you guys for coming. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as all the other AIAs have enjoyed making the work. So thank you.
My name is Victoria Walsh, and I am a macrame, fiber, and community artist here at the Art and History Museums in Maitland. My relationship with the Art and History Museums Maitland began in the early 90s when my parents were married here, and it developed later on in my adulthood when I came here and started working with other artists, volunteering with their community projects, attending some of the art classes, working with paper making and ceramics. Volunteering, teaching, grew and became very symbiotic, eventually leading to my application for an Artists-in-Action residency, allowing me space within Studio 7 that has really provided a space to blossom for not only myself, but for my art as shown in this exhibit. I didn't expect all the transformations I would make within myself and within my art during my residency here. I think the invitation to experiment and to create has really taken hold of me. Using Andre's old sculpting space, I think, has provided me a muse for breaking out of my traditional macrame art and instead making it something more of a narrative and adding a little bit of myself and allowing vulnerability into our spaces. The projects on display are a blueprint to describe where I'm at currently in my studio, starting with the traditional crafty work of macrame displayed in the larger white piece that you see as you walk in, has really transitioned into something that has more of a narrative when I've started dipping those fibers into slip. Slip clay doesn't fire, it's very fragile. If you touch it or flick it, it'll crackle, and if the humidity changes around it, it'll also change. And learning how to work around the piece with the environment with something with such fragility has really added a depth into my work that I wasn't expecting, but it took all of these individual pieces to build that bridge landing in this space. articulating the changes that have come about from COVID-19 and some of the social unrest in 2020 would be very difficult to describe and put into words, I think, at this point. I definitely can see a shift in my work, in my community advocism. All of these things are starting to transition into something new, but I think it's also providing space for all of us to have leniency and forgiveness on ourselves to make those changes. And seeing that has provided an opportunity for me to elevate my work into something not just a craft, but of more of a fine art.